AE4FH, AE4FH. This is WX4TV Mobile. Over.
Alpha Echo 4 Foxtrot Hotel.
Hey, sweetheart. Good copy here in Goldsboro, sitting in the parking lot of the mall. How are you doing?
I didn't quite get the end of that. You're about 5'1".
Yeah, I'm talking to you from the car with a bent antenna. And there's one person watching right now. But why don't you just tell me a little bit about how your day went and what you did and what you found out on your grade and what class it's in. Over.
Class at the college today, and I got a grade for the first test, and it was a 98.
That's outstanding. And you're taking a college biology for science majors course, and you got a 98 on your exam, your first exam. And how old are you?
I'm 13 years old.
Okay, outstanding, Faith Hannah. Stand by. I'm going to tell some people on the on YouTube what's going on, and then I'll talk to you in a minute. AE4FH WX4TV. Hi guys, this is James, WX4TV, and welcome to HamRadio.World. As a lot of you, there's only 6 people watching right now, but as a lot of you know who've been watching this all along, hi Hope, how are you? I want to talk to you on the radio in just a minute, so stand by. I've been driving around in North Carolina doing videos and helping some people out along the way. You guys have been riding along looking at some of what's been going on in the hurricane and the aftermath, and several people had asked about amateur radio. If there's any hams watching the live stream and you want to try to work us, we're on 7273, 7273 on 40 meters lower sideband, and 7273. And right now I'm talking with AE4FH, Faith Hannah, our oldest daughter, who was telling me she's had her first exam in biology class. She's in college, and she's 13. And she had her first biology exam on Monday, and she got it back today. She made a 98, and that was really cool. So guys, I'm going to turn back to the radio, and we'll show you what's going on. I've got a Yaesu 857D, which is what I'm using for HF, or shortwave, to people who don't understand ham radio. It allows us to talk, you know, around the state or around the world. Right now, I'm in North Carolina and talking to my daughter, Faith Hannah, in Florida. So stand by. I'm going to turn up the radio and give her a call. And again, if you're a ham and you want to try to work us, we'll leave some pauses between our transmissions. You guys can jump in. We're on 7.273 megahertz on 40 meters, and that is in the general band, the general portion of the band. So all of you guys can if you have a general class or higher ham radio license, you can give us a shout. Okay, AE4FH, AE4FH. This is WX4TV Mobile. Okay, Faith Hannah, so why don't you say hi to the people who are watching, and maybe you'll say hi to yourself because I think you're watching as well. And then we can let Hope and Grace give a shout if they want to, and then maybe somebody else who's watching might come in and say hi to us as well. Over. Okay, so Hope is standing right there. Your signal went down a little bit. I don't know if you had the microphone farther away from your mouth or not, but why don't you put Hope on the radio? And you're 5'9" plus when you're hitting your peaks here. And I know I'm not as strong there because I'm talking to you mobile with a compromised antenna, but we're still talking to each other, I guess, what, 700 or 800 miles apart. Over.
Yeah, something like that. Here's Hope, Alpha Echo 4 Foxtrot Hotel. Whiskey X-ray 4 Tango Victor, this is Kilo Mike 4 India Papa Foxtrot, over.
Hey Hope, KM4IPF, this is WX4TV. Nice to be able to talk to you and not have to use the phone. So if the cellular phone network was down and wasn't working up here, we could still talk to each other, right? Okay, well, let me talk to Grace, and then I'll try to talk to Mommy. You guys are kind of fading out. And again, if anybody, somebody named Anthony says to say hi, Hope. If anybody is watching or on frequency that wants to give a shout to any of us, to AE4FH or KM4IPF or KM4TXT, N8ZQZ, if she gets on, or myself, feel free to get on. KM4TXT, this is WX4TV, and I know it's going to take you a minute to put the headset on. Over. Hi, Grace. How are you? Did you have fun today? Yeah, okay, so you guys went to the college, and Faith Hannah thought that something was happening today, but it was actually next week that it was going to happen. So you had a couple hours of free time, and you guys played ping pong. Who won? Yeah, it's hard to hit the ping pong ball. I get it. Well, I'm going to say you're a 5x9, and the guy named Anthony, who's watching on YouTube, said to tell you hi. And I'm in Goldsboro, North Carolina. It looks like I'm going to have to sleep in the truck again tonight because all of the hotels around here are full. But I guess that means nobody's going to steal the gas tonight. Over. You got to talk in more sentences than that. But anyway, I love you, Grace. And is your mom around? Does she want to talk? Over. Okay, KJ4LAB, KJ4LAB. This is WX4TV Mobile. Over. Okay, KJ4LAB, you're kind of down in the mud, but I do have a solid copy. The name is James, Juliet Alpha Mike Echo Sierra. It's nice to talk to you on the radio instead of just on YouTube. Over. Okay, yeah, we've been, I'm a cinematographer and storm chaser, and I've been driving around North Carolina kind of showing people what's going on with the hurricane and the recovery. And several people had asked about ham radio, and we figured we'd give them a little demonstration tonight. Over.
Well, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I've been monitoring the traffic out there when the hurricane conditions get worse. Ham radio is a great thing for emergency response. I use 1080, 70 centimeter here in Huntsville, where we have tornado problems periodically. So it's a great asset to have for first responders. Over.
Yeah, it sure is. Were you at the Huntsville Ham Fest a couple weeks ago?
I sure was.
Well, we probably saw you. We were the kids were there. I don't know if you've seen them on the YouTube channel or not, but we were all there. Faith Hannah, AE4FH, who was on earlier, and I had just gotten off the plane from the Youngsters on the Air event, which was in South Africa. So we had like a 32-hour travel to get home, got to Orlando, and then got in the Suburban and drove towards Huntsville. Over.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's pretty impressive. Yeah, we'd like to admit you at the ham test. My kids, I've got twin boys that are 15. They've had their licenses since they were 11. So a lot of interest here in the family as well. Over.
Oh, that's really cool. Are they upgraded to general?
No, they've been distracted. They're happy with their technician license.
Okay, well, maybe if they ever play on satellite, we might be able to do a contact between the kids and them. Our kids like to do satellite as well. All four of our kids have got their licenses. I'm going to stand by just 1 second and see if Michelle, N8ZQZ, has gotten the headsets on, if she wants to say something. N8ZQZ, WX4TV. Okay, hey Michelle, you're down in the mud as well. It's not great conditions right now, but this shows that here we are. I'm sitting in the Suburban in the parking lot of the mall in Goldsboro, North Carolina, using about 80 watts, which is less than what you would have in a typical light bulb in your living room, and talking to somebody in Central Florida and talking to somebody in Huntsville, Alabama. Michelle, we've also got KJ4LAB on frequency. And if this were an actual emergency, we could actually pass messages back and forth. Say if the internet was down and the phone system was down, we could pass messages back and forth to be able to help take care of getting information passed so that people could be helped. Over. Okay, and KJ4LAB, I just wanted to say I'm going to show some people later. I went to Walmart just a little bit ago here, and we're in Goldsboro, North Carolina. We're well inland from where the hurricane came ashore last Friday. There was some rain and there was some flash flooding, but I went to Walmart. They opened back up. The storm came ashore on Friday. They opened back up on Monday, and the shelves are virtually empty. Only a few loaves of bread, nothing in the freezer section, obviously because they lost power. Batteries and all the stuff, the incidental stuff up by the checkout lanes, everything is gone. Not much on the shelves. So it's a good idea to be prepared for something like a hurricane, or even in Huntsville, a tornado could come through and knock out things. So KJ4LAB, do you guys do anything to be prepared to be able to survive for a few days if you have something like that happen?
Absolutely, James. We had, back in 2011, April of 2011, we had tornadoes come through and wipe out our power line. So North Alabama, my area, was out of power for close to a week. So we keep food and water. I've got a go bag in each of the vehicles. I keep one of the cheaper ham radios, a little VHF handheld, in both of the cars with power cords and charging capability, solar charging capability, stuff like that. So we got a generator at the house. We take a lot of emergency preparation because we have to take it seriously to live in a place like this. And I wanted to point out, it's interesting, I'll take a look at the video on the Walmart there, but I have relatives out in Wilmington, North Carolina, right there along the coast, and they do not evacuate. They're all first responders, so they stay behind. They've just given us reports out over the internet and things like that. They're after this event, they're really interested in ham radio too. Over.
Yeah, you know, I was. I'm glad they're okay, first of all, but I was down in Wilmington in the eye wall when it happened on Friday morning, and then I decided to drive up to New Bern, North Carolina, and that's where this live streaming kind of started. Was people started riding along with me by live stream, and I've been all over the state of North Carolina shooting stuff for my work, and letting people ride along on the live stream. So let's take a pause here. KJ4LAB and N8ZQZ. Let's see if anybody else from YouTube or anybody else wants to get in here. This is WX4TV. Anybody else on a frequency wants to give a shout? Okay, there's W4DEX on YouTube who says he can hear you guys, but he can't hear me because he's only 135 miles to my west. And that brings up a good point that these HF signals, they go off into the sky and they bounce off the ionosphere. They do what is called skip. So sometimes close in like that, we can't talk to each other on HF. So what I'm going to do is KJ4N, actually I've forgotten your call sign, I'm sorry, but KJ4LAB, WX4TV, if you could pass a message for me, an informal message to W4DEX, maybe you can give him a shout, and then see if he can hear you, and just tell him I said hi, and then have him tell you something, and you relay it to me, and then I can say, you know, the people on YouTube can see that you were able to relay that message. So I'm assuming he's in central North Carolina, and let's say if we had an emergency here, and we weren't able to make direct contact, somebody somewhere else could actually relay that message. So KJ4LAB, if you can relay a message to Whiskey 4 Delta Echo X-Ray, W4DEX. Tell him I said hi and see if he's got anything to say back. Over.
W4DEX, this is Kilo Juliet 4, Lima Alpha Bravo. How do you copy?
All right, guys, so what's happening is I can't hear him talking because his signals are skipping.
Delta Echo X-ray, how do you copy? Okay, James, WX4TV, I am unable to pick up W4DEX. Is it signal?
Okay, so W4DX is not able to be heard by KJ4LAV. I'm not sure if W4DX is actually trying to transmit. He wasn't aware we were going to do that. But anyway, I appreciate it. And it does. It shows that sometimes conditions are not great, but we may be able to pass messages back and forth to each other. I'm going to give a shout one more time and a listen to see anybody else who wants to give a shout to the group. We've got myself, Whiskey X-Ray 4 Tango Victor, and Michelle, November 8 Zulu Quebec Zulu down in Central Florida, and KJ4 LAB, who is in Huntsville, Alabama. Any other stations on frequency that want to come on and give a shout? Okay, so Michelle, you can listen as well and see if you can hear him. Give him a shout again. Michelle said he did come in. She was able to hear him. Maybe he can pass a message through either you or Michelle. Over.
I have Whiskey 4 Delta X-ray. QSL, I have you outside of Charlotte. James says to tell you hi. We are using this as a training, I guess, on the internet. I don't know if you've been watching the live chops or not.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. WX4TV with N8ZQZ and W4DEX. I could barely hear him, but not hear what he said. So I'm just going to say, Michelle, as you know, you would have been able to pass that message to him, and then if he had a reply, you could pass it back to me. And he's in Charlotte, and we're out here in the eastern part of the state that's been affected by a hurricane. And if the communications were down here, this is a way that we could get in touch with the outside world and pass information back and forth to be able to help people respond to the disaster. Over.
This is N8ZQZ. There's somebody else trying to get in too. I don't know if you can hear it.
No, I don't hear him, so I will let you relay for me. WX4TV. Okay, guys, so what's happening is my signals are skipping over W4DEX.
About skip. So have you got any information you're wanting to pass along? Did you say Kilo November 4 Alpha Uniform Mike? QSL, I am in Tennessee. James, we have Mike, which is Kilo November 4 Alpha Uniform, calling in from Tennessee.
Okay, I don't hear Mike, Kilo November 4 Alpha Uniform, but you can just pass a message that in Goldsboro, North Carolina, there's a little bit of flooding, but everybody seems to be okay, and the shelves at Walmart are pretty empty still. So, thankfully, I have enough food here, and I won't have to worry about going to Walmart to buy food. Over. Hey guys, can't really change bands right now.
Message, but I will pass that along.
This is just a quick demonstration. I'm in the truck. The antenna that I have is very compromised for 80 meters, and I won't be able to talk to her in 80 meters. 20 is dead. We already tried 20 meters. But this is a quick demonstration of how we can pass messages even if we can't talk directly. Not a problem, Joe. It's just this is a quick example of what you can do. Okay, thank you. November 8, Zulu, Quebec, Zulu, and the group. I think what I'm going to do is say 73 to everybody. I'll give one more listen to see if there's any others on here that want to say hi. And then I'll go back and talk about what we just did to the people who are watching on YouTube. So one more call for any other hams on the frequency, either who are watching the live stream to show how this works, or even if you're just hearing us wondering what's going on, give a call, WX4TV. Okay, and we do hear somebody, sounds like they're just playing around, which is not what you're supposed to do. But KJ4LAB, thank you for coming in to the group. And KN4AUU, I know you can't hear me, but thank you. N8ZQZ, AE4FH, KM4TXT, and KM4IPF. This is WX4TV. I'm going to be clear and go back to YouTube. WX4TV, 73. I did hear Alpha Bravo Oscar. Alpha Bravo Oscar, go ahead. All right, nothing heard. WX4TV, clear. All right, guys, I'm going to turn it back around, and I'll show you here. So, yeah, there are some ways to minimize skipping. NVIS, which stands for Near Vertical Incident Skywave, means that you have your antenna in a horizontal plane and you have it down low to the ground, and that causes the signals to go almost straight up, and then they hit the ionosphere and they come back down closer so that they don't skip over things. The antenna that I'm using here in the truck is a vertical antenna. Some of you guys saw it and saw how it got wrapped around a down power line the other day. So the resonant, or the radiating part of the antenna, the metal part sticking up in the air, usually is vertical and it's usually straight. Right now it's twisted all kinds of directions, and some of it is kind of horizontal, so there's a little bit of an NVIS component in it, but it's kind of compromised with how it is, all torn up like that, but it still works. We were able to make contact with people in Charlotte, North Carolina, W4DEX, and we were able to make direct contact with Central Florida. We live in Palm Coast, Florida, which is near between Daytona Beach and St. Augustine. And then we were able to make direct contact with Huntsville, Alabama. So let's say that the hurricane came ashore as a Category 5, like they thought it might, and it wiped everything off the face of the earth in Wilmington, North Carolina. It's conceivable that we could set up the radios down there in Wilmington and be able to pass messages back and forth to the EOC, the state EOC in Raleigh, North Carolina. Now, if they couldn't hear us because we were too close, somebody further away who could hear us and who could hear them could pass messages back and forth. And there are ways that you can pass messages under standard formats that they have us train with for emergencies and things like that. So Anyway, that's a little bit about ham radio and how it works. Tomorrow, I'm probably going to do some, try to get down to Jacksonville and possibly into Wilmington. I've heard that Jacksonville, when I went to Walmart earlier today, or just a little while ago, they told me that they heard that the Jacksonville Walmart was like knocked down. So I haven't confirmed that. I'm going to try to confirm it if we can get down there. And what I'll also do is I will try to set up the field radio station that I have with me. I have an HF station and a UHF VHF station. I have a 25-foot mast that can mount to the ground, or also, hanging on with the battery. How did you talk to Robin in UK? All right, stand by. I'll tell you that in just a minute. This 25-foot mast is collapsible, and I'll put a dipole antenna up in the air and show you how we can get on HF from there. Now, how did we talk to Robin in the UK? That's kind of cheating. It's called Echolink, and it is voice over IP, where he could actually do a direct connection over the internet to the repeater and talk to me. So if we, in an emergency, sometimes you can use that. But let's say we're in an emergency where things like the internet don't work. That happened with us during Irma last year. Our internet did not work for a week and a half. We had cell phone coverage, and we could make calls most of the time, but LTE was messed up, and even 4G, even 3G and 1X was messed up, like it has been down in Fayetteville this week, yesterday and today. We weren't able to use data at home. Now, we could go a couple blocks down the road and hit another cell tower and have data. But after Katrina, there wasn't anything. If you didn't have a cell phone that had a FEMA ID attached to it, you weren't going to use your cell phone. And it was that way for weeks and weeks and weeks. I was down there for 6 weeks. So we wouldn't have been able to use something like, Gary, I'll give you a shout here in just a second. Give me your call sign, and I'll show you guys how Echolink works. Gary is connected to the K4CYP repeater via the Echolink, or the voice over IP. Gary, what's your call sign here? Give it to me again if you didn't give it to me, or give me a shout. WX4TV. I'm on the K4CYP repeater. All right, KE8AMK. I'm going to give you a shout, and I'm going to turn the video back to here. We'll show it. KE8AMK. KE8AMK. This is WX4TV.
UX4TV, this is KE8AMK.
Okay, KE8AMK. That shows the people how Echolink is working. Tell us over the radio here and over the internet exactly where you're located, and explain how you're getting into the repeater here, which should only be local for me, but since we have internet connection, you're able to talk to me. Over. And the Australian guy with Echolink, if you want to come in.
That is correct. I'm in Columbus, Ohio. I'm currently I only have my on my tag right now. I am looking forward to getting into HF here in the near future. I am transmitting using my cell phone via Echolink, the app. A4CYP.
Okay, well, that's fine business. That's really cool. And it looks like we've got somebody in Australia who said that they had Echolink. Maybe they'll check in too. And just for anybody local on a repeater, this is WX4TV, James. And we're showing some people through a YouTube stream how amateur radio can be used in an emergency. So thanks for letting us use the repeater. Let's stand by and see if the station in Australia gets into the repeater via Echolink. And thanks for the contact, WX4TV.
Very much for what you're doing, James. I'm sure I speak for everybody. We really appreciate what you're doing. So, this will be KE8AMK, and we'll be standing by.
73 KE8AMK on Echolink, WX4TV. Thanks for the contact. WX4TV standing by. Okay, guys, so I'm going to switch the radio back. So what happened there is KE8AMK was connecting to the local VHF repeater The repeater allows what could normally be radios that could talk maybe
K4CYP repeater.
Anthony, in an emergency situation, you can use a ham for communication without a license. Yes and no. That is not exactly true. If there is no other way to communicate, absolutely no other way to communicate, meaning everything else has been exhausted, and if it is about life, immediate loss of life and or property, you can get away with getting on any frequency. But you better be prepared to prove that you did not have any other options. It's not something you can just go willy-nilly and do. So KE8AMK logged into the local repeater here, which gives a coverage of about a radius of I think about 40 miles on VHF. He logged in over the internet. If the internet was out, we wouldn't be able to do that. But it is another way that we have to be able to communicate back and forth. Amateur radio is the last line of defense when it comes to emergency communications. And a lot of the stuff that we do prepares us for being able to do that. You know, there's a lot of fun in the hobby. I'm going to drive around while we're at it as well. There's a lot of fun in the hobby. It's really cool to take the same amount of power as a light bulb and to talk to somebody in Australia when you're driving down the road. Does that happen every day? Not exactly. But, whoops, I can't turn that off because you guys want to see me. I'm just going to turn around then. It doesn't happen every day. But it is conceivable and is possible, and I have done it many times, talked around the world, to the other side of the world, from this truck with 100 watts with this small antenna on the roof. Who runs the repeater? The repeater runs automatically. It's owned by, this one here is owned by the Goldsboro or the Wayne County Amateur Radio Club. I'm not sure if it's Goldsboro or Wayne County. And it is out for amateur radio operators to be able to use. And in the United States, there's 3 different classes of licenses that you can earn right now. The first one is the entry level. It's called the technician class. You have to pass exams from the FCC, and they get progressively harder. You have to know progressively more information about electronics and radio theory and rules and stuff like that. First one is the technician class license. It gives you the privileges of using UHF and VHF like this. I don't know what the W7HCC Handyham is all about, but anyway, it gives you privileges on UHF, VHF. You can talk on satellite as it goes overhead. You get a little bit of HF privileges on 10 meters, which is good during the times of the sunspot cycle when there's lots of sunspots. Right now there are no sunspots, so 10 meters is not that good. And you are able to use Morse code on some of the HF bands. The next level up that you can get is a general class license that gives you a lot of privileges on HF where you can talk around the world. You can use voice, you can use Morse code or what they call CW. You can use digital modes where you can talk back and forth using your computers. Slow scan television, which you basically, if you remember dial-up from the 80s and 90s, it's like sending a GIF picture. Real low resolution, but people like to do it. And then the extra class license is the highest class that you can get now, and that license is all right, stand by. I'm going to pause. Anthony, my call sign is Whiskey X-Ray 4 Tango Victor. Whiskey X-Ray 4 Tango Victor. And we'll see if we can hear Anthony in Australia. This is WX4 TV monitoring 85. And we don't hear Anthony.
X-Ray 4 Tango Victor. From Victor Echo 5 Kilo Charlie. A4CYP.
Okay, Victor Echo 5 Kilo Charlie. VE5KC, WX4TV. Name is James. And apparently you are connected with Echolink. Where is your location, over?
I'm located up here in Saskatchewan in Canada. We've been riding along with you here for the last few days, V5KC.
Okay, well, it's nice to make your acquaintance here, and this is a cool way to show people who don't really understand what ham radio is about. Just live stream it and let them see making some contacts on Echolink and on HF and see how it all works, over.
QSL, it's interesting, the delay between the live stream. I have to turn the volume down here. I'm talking on here and you're talking on there. So anyway, that's interesting. And I was listening on 40, but propagation is not good that distance, at least right now. But anyway, we have our fun with amateur radio, and it's really nice to be able to talk to you.
Yeah, VE5KC, what Echolink node did you use? Anthony in Australia, I guess, was wanting to connect to me directly, but obviously I can't do that while I'm using my phone for the live stream. What node did you use to get into this repeater, over?
Just use search and search for the call sign. That's all I did, and the call sign came up for the repeater in Goldsboro, and so I connected. Go ahead.
Okay, so you searched for K4CYP, Kilo 4, Charlie, Yankee, Papa, and we'll see if he in Australia gets connected. I'm going to say 73 for now. Thanks for coming in and showing how this can be used, and I'm going to go back to talking to people and talking about HF and how this all works. Thanks for the contact. WX4TV.
Fine with this, and I hope one day to work you or the girls down there and listen for weak stations out of Canada with our 100 watts and a wire. 7-3.
Okay, well, 7-3. Watch tomorrow, and I will probably set up an HF station somewhere here in eastern North Carolina using a dipole and a 25-foot mast, and we'll have a little bit better chance of working each other. I have antennas. I have dipoles for 40, 75, and 20 meters, over.
QSL, try 20 meters if you do have the time. That might be better. 7-3.
Okay, 7-3, WX4TV. Okay, so Anthony, I have Echolink on my phone, and obviously I can't use Echolink on my phone while using it for live streaming, so we're not going to be able to connect that way. If you can connect into the K4CYP repeater, you can do that, and let's just if Anthony can do it, that's great. If not, let's not get any other guys checking in here, because I didn't ask if it was okay to do this. This repeater hasn't got a whole lot of traffic, but I'm not a member of this club anymore. I used to live here in Goldsboro, oh my goodness, like 30 years ago or longer. And some of the hams are still here that mentored me when I was a little kid. Yeah, W4DEX, 60 meters I do have, but I haven't played with it enough with this radio to exactly understand how to make it work, and I don't have a manual here because I can't tune the antenna with the tuner. Now you know this is a screwdriver antenna, that it changes the electrical length of the antenna up and down, and I can't throw a carrier up and tune the antenna. So I'm trying to see here what Michelle had to say. We have not used DMR. Michael, I got into ham radio when I was 12 years old back in the 1980s. All right, here we go. Victor Kilo 2 November Echo Whiskey, I believe. Is this Anthony? WX4 TV. I believe that was Anthony, Victor Kilo 2.
Hello, James. I finally worked it out. I wish that was Anthony, Victor Kilo 2.
I hear myself talking. Yeah, and Anthony, you need to turn down your computer, I guess. Okay, Anthony, yeah. VK2 NKW WX4 TV. Thanks for the contact. I don't want to tie up the repeater here too much, but we could hear the delay from the YouTube stream here to show people how this all works. So I appreciate you checking in, and thanks for the contact. And hopefully we could make contact on 20 meters. If you have HF capabilities, tomorrow I'll see if I can set up a 20-meter station, and maybe in the early morning hours on 20 meters we may be able to try and work each other over.
Copy that, James. Okay, then if we won't tie up the YouTube stream. So you keep safe, and I'll give you 73s, and I'll try 20 meters tomorrow. Okay, James, take care. Over.
Okay, Whiskey X-Ray 4 Tango Victor, WX4 TV, thank you, and 73. Alright guys, 73 in ham radio talk means best wishes and goodbye, something like that. Best wishes is what it really means. So really this was not exactly North Carolina to Australia. It was North Carolina to a radio right down the road in North Carolina to the internet to Australia. So it wasn't talking to each other by radio to Australia. It was talking to each other over the internet. But it is a way that you can talk to somebody all the way around the world without having to run up your phone bill. Now, what we were talking about on 20 meters. 20 meters is one of the HF bands. And this time of year, typically, at least from Florida, at about 3 or 4 in the morning, our time, we can hear people in Australia and New Zealand and that part of the world pretty well, just pretty regularly, and talk to them back and forth with 100 watts. And if I set up tomorrow evening, if I set up an HF station with a dipole antenna, I'll leave it up overnight, and I'll get up and see if we can set a schedule up and work Anthony on the radio, and maybe you guys can get up and see that. Jake, are you trying to use Echolink, or what are you trying to do? We'll wait till Jake comes back up. So anyway, guys, this is how amateur radio can work in an emergency. You heard how we were able to pass messages from here to Charlotte, North Carolina, even though the guy W4DEX and I could not hear each other directly. And also another station, KN4AUU, I believe it was, we couldn't hear. And yet Michelle was able to, okay, Jake, I'm on 7273. Not necessarily better for longer distances, it just depends on the band. I'm going to see, Jake, I don't know your call sign, but I'm going to give a shout. Got to grab the right microphone. This is Whiskey X-Ray 4 Tango Victor. Is this frequency in use? Whiskey X-Ray 4 Tango Victor. CQ. Whiskey X-Ray 4 Tango Victor. WX4 TV mobile, over. W7HCC. W7HCC from WX4 TV mobile, over. W7HCC from WX4 TV, over. Okay, and okay, I think I hear you in there. W7HCC. This is WX4 TV, and the name is James, over. Okay, I can just barely hear you down there in the mud. We can try again tomorrow night and see if we can hear each other down there. Hear each other tomorrow night. We'll try and set up in the daytime on 20 meters and try on 40 meters tomorrow night. Let's try one more time. W7HCC from WX4 TV. Blah, blah, we're on 7273 on 40 meters. Okay, nothing heard. All right, guys. So that's a 46-minute introduction to ham radio and how it can be used. I'm going to tell you again. I went to Walmart here in Goldsboro. Remember, the hurricane struck North Carolina on Friday morning of last week. Walmart opened back up, according to the employees, on Monday. It is now Wednesday. I walked into the store to get some Red Bull. Thankfully, they had some. They didn't have much of anything else. They had some fresh food. Fresh fruit was back in. The meat aisle was virtually empty. The freezers were absolutely empty. There were a few loaves of bread. The stuff like the candy and the stuff that you would buy, impulse items up by the front cash registers, they were gone. And I actually shot a little short video. Yeah, Red Bull filled. I shot a little video in there to show you need to be prepared. Be prepared. You don't know when a flash flood is going to happen. You don't know when a forest fire might happen. Remember, there was a forest fire in Tennessee in Pigeon Forge that put a lot of people homeless, closed a lot of business down. Earthquakes like happened in Haiti. There was an earthquake that happened not long ago in Sri Lanka, I believe it was. Tsunamis, tornadoes, military coups like happened in Haiti, or not Haiti, Turkey a few years ago. We actually sat there and listened to it happen live on 20 meters. The hams there were telling what was going on outside their windows. That was fascinating to hear. And to be honest, it was a lot different than what we heard about on CNN. So, Jake, yes, I know who you are now, and we did make contact. I did hear you. Do you do CW at all, Jake? And I'll look for your response. Do you do Morse code at all? All right, so while waiting for Jake, no, okay, I'm sorry, Jake. I was going to say, I think I have a key somewhere in this car that we could show some Morse code. In fact, I'm going to let you guys hear some Morse code here in a minute. I'll see if I can find some. Stand by. Not much on 30 meters right now. Let's go down to okay, so that guy's sending a string of numbers. Hey, Kevin. That was Morse code that you were hearing there. A lot of hams still use Morse code. We can do digital modes and all kinds of fun things that we can do with ham radio. Anybody have any questions about ham radio or anything? I'll watch the screen here for a minute before I figure out where I'm going to park this truck and spend the night. There are no hotel rooms available anywhere in eastern North Carolina. So I will be guarding the gas in person tonight. Any more questions about ham radio before we say 73 for the night? I'm going to give it about 60 seconds. I'll go back to the thing about Walmart. The stores, the shelves were empty. Goldsboro wasn't directly affected. I mean, you guys saw the flooding. There was not a whole bunch of flooding. D-Star. D-Star is another mode that uses the internet. It is a digital mode that you can talk simplex from radio to radio using that digital mode, but it also uses the internet. No, you do not need to know Morse code in the United States anymore to get a ham radio license. I understand there's still a couple countries, I believe in Africa, that require it. Any other questions? Questions going once, questions going twice. Well, guys, I hope you have enjoyed the ride. How was dinner? Oh, my goodness. Dinner was good. I'm full. And Michelle, I'm sorry you were eating crackers, peanut butter crackers. I know. Keith, we can talk about CB in just a minute. Let me talk about dinner and we'll talk about CB. As some of you guys go back and watch the last like 15 minutes of the live stream right before this one. I'm fine, Daniel. And I went to Wilbur's Barbecue here in Goldsboro and we got a personal tour of the smokehouse where they cook the barbecue, and I smell like the smokehouse, and I don't think I want these clothes to ever be washed. They smell so good. In fact, I'm hungry smelling my shirt right now. So dinner was good. Now CB, how does this fit into it? It doesn't fit in. I didn't eat the collards. I like collards, but I do get a collard green tummy ache really bad. They don't sit well on my tummy, so I don't eat them very often. Michelle has had them, and I think she might have liked them. Blah blah. It's not legal for us to modify an amateur radio rig to go down to the CB frequencies. CBs have to be certified by the FCC, and as amateur radio operators under Part 97 of the FCC rules, we are allowed to modify a CB to go to 10 meters to a ham frequency, but we can't modify a radio to go to a CB frequency or to a GMRS or any of the other thing. How are the daughters doing? They're used to this. I'm a storm chaser. I'm gone working on political campaigns. I'm gone a lot, but when I'm home, since we homeschool, if I'm not working, they're not going to school. We have a very different life, but because we homeschool, it makes it so that they can drop everything when I'm home and we can be a family. So the kids have been storm chasing and they like it, and they probably would have loved to have come on this one, but remember, when I left home, this was still supposed to be a Category 4, possible Category 5 storm. So back to CB, how does it fit in? The CB bands are used in REACT for emergency communications, but they're not Tyler, stand by. I'll answer your question in just a second. Sorry, my eyes are burning here, probably from the smokehouse. My eyes smell like barbecue pig too. The CB, I've lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. Let me scroll back and see if there's something that will jog me to it. Ham and CB. The big difference between ham and CB is ham radio. You have to understand radio theory and electronics and rules. You have to pass a license exam from the FCC or whatever licensing body happens to be in your country. As amateur radio operators, we can build our own equipment. We can modify our own equipment. We certify that it's actually working properly, that there aren't any what they call spurious emissions, meaning if you're transmitting on one frequency that you haven't got another a harmonic frequency transmitting. which is where sometimes the cheaper radios that people get, the Bofang radios, sometimes don't pass that. We can use a lot more power legally. We can use up to 1,500 watts. You don't have to. We've worked the entire world virtually. We've worked all the way around the world with less than 100 watts one time. We worked Australia with 5 watts and a wire strung in a tree. Now that was on a really good day where conditions were fantastic, but it is possible. We can use single sideband. We can use digital modes. We can use AM, FM, Morse code, radio teletype. We can send images. We can bounce signals off the moon. It's called Earth, Moon, Earth. There are people who have big antenna arrays that they point at the moon and they bounce the signal off, and it comes back 2 seconds later to somebody on the other side of the world. Have to both be able to see the moon, obviously. And they can talk to each other by bouncing signals off the moon. Can't do that with CB. Our radios look cooler. What else? We can talk on satellite. Okay, yeah. Michelle says the technician license is a very easy license to pass. I don't even mind with technician license if you just go memorize the rules. Just make sure that you get into a good club where you have what they call Elmers, or the Elmers are people who are, just hams who help mentor you. The technician license gives you enough information to be able to stay legal and not kill yourself. And you can get on the radio and you can start learning and you can find out what you like to do. If you want to upgrade, you can upgrade. So yeah, there's a lot more we can do with ham radio than you can do with CB. I'm not one of the haters of CB. When I was a kid, my grandfather had a CB in his motorhome. His call sign was KGC6005. And on, I think, channel 27 or something, single sideband, I heard somebody from Canada come in, and we were in Florida, and I was like, whoa, this is cool. And that kind of helped pique an interest in radio communications. I will say my job as a cameraman, cinematographer, is directly related to amateur radio. When I was a kid, there was a guy named Herman Kane here in Goldsboro. His call sign was W4TUQ, Whiskey 4 Tango Uniform Quebec. He's been dead for years. He was really big into slow scan television. And like I said, that was where you can send a still image. It takes like 30 seconds to send it. It's very low res. Back then, it was black and white. And he gave me one of his slow scan TV things so that I could do it when I got my general class license. I liked it so much I wanted to get into photography. I got into photography, and that morphed into television and video. I have been able to fly to every continent in the world except for Australia and Antarctica in first class at somebody else's expense, and was paid to do it. And that came from being a ham radio operator and getting interested in television and image making from ham radio. If I wanted to, there are hams here in Goldsboro that I could call up in the middle of the night and say, hey, I need a place to stay. And they would say, okay, come on over. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be a burden on them. There are hams overseas that if I were overseas, I would be able to say, hey, I need a place to stay. And I say, come on in. Not only that, they say, get on the radio. When Faith Hannah got asked to go to South Africa for the youngsters on the air, we got in contact with a ham in Dubai. We had a 22 or 21 hour layover in Dubai. Faith Hannah got invited by the Emirates Amateur Radio Society to come operate their club station. And you have to know that this is in the United Arab Emirates. It's an Arab country. And I was concerned as to how, as a young woman, she would be received. But she was received with open arms, and they even gave her a really cool appreciation award for coming. The Last Man Standing show on Fox now with Tim Allen. Tim Allen is a ham, and almost everybody who works on the crew on that show is an amateur radio operator. And if you've ever seen on the show when he does his podcasts, there's a ham radio station behind him in his podcast. And there's these cards on the wall that have people's call signs. And they're called QSL cards. And we use those QSL cards to confirm that we've spoken to somebody. And we give the details to win. This year, you'll see Hope's QSL card on the wall. It's kind of down low, right back by the radio. Her call sign is KM4IPF. You heard her on the radio at the beginning of this live stream. She got to operate that station back in December of 2016. I was out there working on a documentary about some of the original people who worked with Walt Disney, and that was a big day for her. She got to sit next to Richard Sherman of the Sherman Brothers as he played the music from Mary Poppins and the Parrot Trap and some of the iconic Disney movie music. And later that day, she was over at the set of Last Man Standing, operating the ham radio station. So that was really cool, something that she got to do. As I said, you can build your own equipment if you want. You can go out in the field and operate. It's a lot of fun. We like to go out in the field and operate and learn about how to use solar power, learn about how to set up antennas in the field, how to stay dry. That's kind of fun. So yeah, big difference between ham radio and CB. CB gives you one band. It is very dependent upon the sunspot cycles. CB is kind of a cavalier cowboy band that people, you know, you're only supposed to run, I think, like 5 or 7 watts. And now, you know, there's people, blah, blah, you were talking about pills and all that. What he means is big power transistors. They'll run illegal amplifiers. The FCC doesn't regulate it anymore. They very rarely do anything to anybody that does anything. Ham radio is a self-regulating service. We try to keep things done right, and we'll be self-regulating, self-policing, and it's a really fun hobby. So any other questions here that we can answer? All right, Keith Wingo, not talk to satellites, talk through satellites. There are several amateur radio satellites that are built by ham radio operators. They get free rides usually on a rocket going up to the space station or somewhere in space. And they orbit the Earth, typically in a period of about 90 minutes. And as they go by, you can point your antenna up there and you can talk through the satellite. TN Daily, go to HamRadio.World, HamRadio.World, that's a period, and W-O-R-L-D, not this YouTube channel, but the actual website. There's some links there on how you can get into it. The ARRL, the American Radio Relay League, has information about how to get into ham radio. We have a link to a site called hamstudy.org. It's really, you know, if you can't find a local club, get in, thank you, Michelle. Get in touch with us through the website, and I'll see if we can find a local club that can help you out. And again, thank you, Michelle. You know what? I need to just put how to use hamstudy.org on the website. Michael, they got started with radios 3 years ago. Michelle thought it would be good for Zechariah to get his license because he wants to be an aeronautical engineer, and Michelle thought it was blah blah. You know, we'll allow you to talk about CB radio, but if we're going to talk about making amplifiers and things that aren't legal, we're gonna block it. Okay. This is the HamRadio.World channel. If you want to get on and talk about modifying CVs and stuff, there are other channels where you can do it, but we're going to stick to ham radio here. I'd love to have you here and find out about ham radio, but we're going to keep it to the legal use of the radio frequencies. Zechariah wants to be an aeronautical engineer, and we thought, okay, maybe it would be a good thing for him to learn how to solder and whatnot. And when he was studying, Faith Hannah was like, I want to try, and she tried, and she passed, and then Hope wanted to try. We have kids who worked really hard. I have to give them credit for the work. Yeah, they're bright kids, but they're hard workers. It took a lot of work for them to pass those exams, weeks of study. We made the studying for amateur radio exams their homeschool for weeks while they studied. And amateur radio also gives a lot of opportunity to learn. Hope was in Germany's satellite. Oh, okay, yeah, that's right. Hope was in Germany's, in the AMSAT, what is it, DE? She was in their magazine. Hope likes to work satellites a lot. That's kind of her thing. Faith Hannah, though, broke the world record talking the longest distance on one of the amateur radio satellites back in August of 2016. And that record lasted for a couple months until somebody in Brazil broke it after that. Yes, Suki, you can bounce ham radio signals off the moon. You can bounce UHF, VHF. I did enjoy my dinner, yes. You can bounce signals off the moon. There are people who do it. It's called Earth, Moon, Earth. And it's kind of cool. I've never done it. I've seen it done. And it's really cool to think that you're sending something like 180,000 miles away. How do we get our children more interested in ham radio? Well, once they got their licenses, I was like, hey, let's go do this. This is what I like to do. And they enjoyed doing it for about a week or 10 days. And then it was like, whatever. And then Michelle had the great idea of like, find out what they like to do. And encourage them to do what they like to do. Faith Hannah is very competitive. There are amateur radio contests where the idea is to make as many contacts with as many different stations around the world as possible and pass certain pieces of information correctly and accurately within a certain amount of time. Faith Hannah is really into that. Actually, we all are. Hope likes working satellites because she gets to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and be outside with Daddy. She's kind of a daddy's girl. All of our kids, I don't have a favorite. I'm not saying that at all. I am not saying anything about having a favorite, but she's kind of a daddy's girl. She likes to hang out with me. Grace somewhat likes to hang out with me, but Grace just likes to talk to people around the world. If you go to QRZ.com, QRZ.com, oh, that took care of that, blah. You shouldn't have done that. And search Hope, KM4 TXT, KM4, he's gone, TXT. You can see she's got all over her page, if you're DX, work me. And DX means distance or somebody in another country. She likes to talk to people in other countries. Zechariah likes to build stuff. He doesn't like to get on and talk to people. He likes to build stuff. And Michelle, can you type out the QRZ.com so they can see? QRZ.com is where hams can go and basically make a free web page about themselves. So we got the kids just to be able to get them out there and doing something that they enjoy and that they like. And they'll get into it. There are some people who force their kids into it, and they make them do stuff, and you're going to enjoy this whether you like it or not. And those kids will get on the radio, but then when they get older, it won't stick. I like to think that our kids are going to stick with it. They like it. We didn't make them do it. They all asked to do it. So. That's think what you want to think, but our kids like to do it. And I think if you watch the YouTube channel, you'll see that. Any other questions? No, I don't think that they use the 10 code in any amateur radio. We use Q codes instead. QRZ means who's calling me. QSL, typically these are used in Morse code, but people use them in voice as well. QSL means I've received what you said, or basically like Roger, 10-4. QTH would be like 10-20. That means where are you? Tyler, our kids do love it. They like it a lot. And if you ever see them at a ham fest, you'll know from talking to them that, you know, this isn't something mom and dad made them to do. They really like doing it. They drag me and mom out doing stuff a lot of times. Sorry, my voice is going, so I'm drinking sweet tea. Any other questions? Going once? Yeah, we found that a lot of kids, you know what, you got to talk about their mom. Their mom is second to none. Yeah, Hope says go to local ham fests. Kids like to build stuff, and you know, get them building kits, get them building antennas, do whatever. Lisa, you know, I don't know. People ask me that, and the kids are trying to learn Morse code. It's something they've been trying to do on their own, and I've got to figure it out. When I did it back when I was 11 or 12 years old, I used an audio cassette from the ARRL, and I learned it that way, and I just picked it up very easily. At that time, I was in band. I was a drummer. I was musical. I'm pretty good with rhythm, and I just heard it. It clicked. What did the kids in Africa say? Satellites versus computer. Oh, so in South Africa at the Youngsters on the Air convention, basically it was a week with a bunch of young people who were ham radio operators or licensees. Operators implies that they just push buttons and don't know what they're doing. They're licensees. A lot of these kids, they got a chance to build their own satellite antennas, and they got a chance to try to talk to people on satellite as the satellite went by. It orbits the Earth, and you have to follow it with your antenna across the Earth, and you have to be able to change the frequency, because the frequency changes just like the sound of a train going by. You know, like, it's called Doppler shift. It's challenging, and these kids were like, "Wow, this is so much more fun than using digital modes. This is so, you know, it's a challenge." And we got in South Africa, I think about 20 or 25 kids out of the 80 made their first contacts on satellite while they were there. Oh, one of the things they did there, they built what's called a Bakker, or balloon carrying amateur radio. These kids built small payloads that weighed, I think, less than a kilogram. It had science experiments on them and amateur radio stuff on them, and sent them into the stratosphere on a balloon that went up, I think, 30 kilometers in the air before it exploded, and then parachute brought everything down. You can do that with ham radio. So many cool things you can do with ham radio. You can control radio-controlled airplanes with ham radio. That's something Zechariah's working on doing. He's trying to recreate a radio transmitter from the marshmallows. Actually worked very well. Their stuff survived, and they said that they became freeze-dried. I didn't get to try one. I wanted one, but they ate them all. I imagine they probably were like the marshmallows in what is not Captain Crunch, Lucky Charms. And what he's talking about is Faith Hannah's group shoved marshmallows inside their box to protect their gear from shock, and also to act as insulation, so when it got up there in the stratosphere it didn't freeze to death. And it worked. They got all their data back. So any other questions? Yeah, Zechariah is not big on talking on the radio. He's not big on talking to people much, unless he, yeah, they had a pressure experiment. They had some other things in there. Here, let's see. Zechariah is not big on talking on the radio, but he loves to build stuff. And ham radio gives him that opportunity to build stuff. And it's also given him the opportunity to meet a lot of people that work in the space industry and the aeronautical engineer industry. I'm looking back for the CW. Is CW Morse a hit or more QSOs with microphone? All right, I think what you're asking to do, is CW more popular than voice? It's a good question. I think there's not as many people doing CW or Morse code as there were in the years past, but the people who do it love it. I love doing it. It's a lot of fun. Our kids are actually trying to learn and are learning Morse code. I'm going to go ahead and say it. Faith Hannah, every time she comes up to a challenge, she wants to go and meet that challenge. She's 13 years old. She's in college. She decided she wanted to take biology for science majors because she wanted to. And the teacher tried to talk her out of it, saying, this is going to be a tough course. She just had her first exam. She made a 98 on it. So she decided to learn Morse code on her own. And she came up to me, and the first message she sent to me by Morse code was, Daddy, I just farted. Yeah, that's what she sent me, just using a practice oscillator, not over the radio. So I sent her a message back that said, so did I. So we were over there laughing and chuckling, and nobody else in the family knew what we were talking because we were the only two that knew Morse code. And it was kind of fun. There was a time I was traveling somewhere, and I saw a Japanese guy who had a hat on. It had his call sign on, JA1 or something. I don't know what his call sign was. He didn't speak English. I didn't speak Japanese. We whistled Morse code back and forth and were able to have a small conversation. We told each other where we were from, and we told each other our names with Morse code. Okay, in the ISS, yeah, there are hams on the ISS. Most of the astronauts that go up there are hams. It's been a while since there's one that actually wants to talk to people. The last one that was up here that wanted to was Doug Wheelock, Commander Doug Wheelock. He apparently is scheduled to fly in 2019 or 2020, and he will be active making contacts as he flies around the world during his spare time. But right now, pretty much the only thing that's done with the ISS and ham radio is called ARIS, or Amateur Radio on the ISS. And that's where they have scheduled contacts with schools around the world. And they're still fun because if they're flying over you and you have an antenna and you know the frequency to listen to and you know where to point it, which you can find out by using a program called ProSat on the iPhone. There's other programs you can have on Android phones. I don't know what they are. But you can see when the ISS is coming, it's like, okay, there's an ARIS contact at such and such a day at such and such a time. Oh, it's going to be over us. So you can sit there and hold your antenna and point it. And you can hear the astronaut answering the questions. I should talk about ham radio in events like this. Yes, okay. In events like disasters, say that there are there's many things here, so I'm not gonna be looking at the chat because I don't want to get diverted away from talking about it. During disasters, there's shelters, and typically they'll try to have amateur radio operators in the shelter and also have amateur radio operators in the EOC, or the Emergency Operations Center. And the idea is let's say everything else fails, amateur radio can still be used to talk back and forth to pass messages. During Hurricane Matthew a couple years ago, you heard people talking up here about Hurricane Matthew. Well, we got hit by Matthew before they did up here. We had some shelters that were manned, and I was at the Emergency Operations Center, and a special needs shelter, which was, you know, one where people with medical needs were. One of the nurses from the health department got tired of being there and started telling people, okay, go home, the storm's over. The storm hadn't hit yet, but she was tired of being there. So I got a call from from one of the ham radio operators there saying, okay, the storm's over, can we be released and can we go home? And I'm like, no, the storm's not over, it hasn't happened yet. I said, stand by, let me go talk to the director of the EOC. Talk to the director of the EOC. He's like, no, storm's not over. We don't want them to leave, they need to stay open. So he got on his cell phone to call the shelter manager. The cell phone services were down, he couldn't get a hold of her. So he got his trusty 800 megahertz radio, and this is my ham radio. I'm going to turn it off so I don't transmit. And he's like, hey, shelter lady, this is the EOC. No, you can't shut down. You're still under orders to stay open. Crickets, crickets, crickets. The shelter lady had a skirt that didn't have a belt. Her radio that they issued her was pulling her skirt down, so she left it in her office. She was the principal of the school. So guess what? Ham radio was used to pass a message back of, hey, turn your radio on. We need to tell you you can't shut down. It was a nurse who was tired of being there, was trying to tell people to shut down. And that could have caused people to get hurt or killed. When Michelle and I were just about to get married, she had moved down to North Carolina. We were going to get married. Somebody did not dial 811 before they dug. And here in the States, 811 is where you call so they'll come and look for buried cables in your yard or wherever you're going to dig. They cut a fiber optic trunk line that went to a multi-county 911 call center. And that was in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. So I believe 2 counties were down. 911 did not work. The 911 center could still call out on the repeaters and talk to all the cops. They could talk to all the ambulances. They could talk to the fire department, but nobody could not call 911. Within an hour, they had mobilized several, I think about 100 hams, and they went to key locations around the county, and those locations were broadcast on all the media multiple times. 911 is down. If you have an emergency, go to Hardee's at this corner, or go to McDonald's at this corner, or go to Eckerd Drugs at that corner. And hundreds of messages were passed, life-saving and property-saving messages were passed by people going to that ham radio operator. I have an emergency. This is the address. This is what the emergency is. The ham relays that message back to the amateur radio operators at the EOC. The EOC makes the call to the appropriate agency. They get out there and they meet the needs. That is an actual, it happened. It was 1993, probably March of 93, I think. We were married in August, and Michelle had moved down, I believe, in March or April of 93. So yeah, that's a case where amateur radio comes into play. And I'm going to see what other Michelle wanted to say. I'm trying to find it. Stand by, stand by, stand by. Yeah, so hospitals. You would think that, okay, the hospital is an emergency and the communications network goes down, and the hospital could use ham radio to be able to talk to the EOC and know that an ambulance was coming. Yes, that's the case. But let's say that the multi-line PBX system, the phone system in the hospital goes down, and you've got 10 floors in the hospital, and you have multiple wards in an emergency room that needs to find out if there's a bed on the 8th floor. What if they can't call back and forth? Well, now you can have hams come in with these little handheld radios, and they can be at the nurse's station and at the director's office and at the ER and whatnot, and pass information back and forth like that. I don't know personally of any times that happened. I have read of a few times where amateur radio has been used in a hospital in that situation. After the earthquake in Haiti, there was no cell service. I was down there on the USNS Comfort, that's the hospital ship. Amateur radio saved the day. And usually with amateur radio, you're not allowed to do anything that's commercial. And if you noticed, the kids had this YouTube channel monetized, and they helped pay for some of their ham radio gear with it. But I turned monetization off of this video so that we're not making any money on this video, and I didn't ask for any donations or anything on this video, because you're not supposed to do anything for any commercial gain with ham radio. After the earthquake, President Obama, and this is interesting, he signed an executive order waiving that part of Part 97 for a while, so that the University of Miami and some of the other doctors could talk back and forth and order supplies and get the things that they needed so that they could help the people who were down there. There were reports of doctors who were consulting with each other, orthopedic surgeons and whatnot, that were consulting back and forth to different countries over ham radio. So that was a big use of ham radio. It uses their own tower next to state and police. Yeah, you're right, Elliot. Some hospitals do have their own towers. Other hospitals, like where we live, don't have that. And they actually, the Flagler County, Florida hospital has asked for amateur radio operators to be available to come in and operate. So, you know, ham radio operators is about, sorry, hold on. Ham radio is the last line of defense. Now, Anthony was talking via ham radio. I called for health and welfare check-in on my colleagues' elderly parents in Wilmington. The result was a fellow ham contacted a couple the next morning and then confirmed. Health and welfare messages can be sent. Hey, are mom and dad okay? They were in the hurricane and now I can't get a hold of them. Via ham radio, somebody sent a message. I don't know how they got in contact with them, but they somehow got in contact with them to let them know that they're loved and that the people want to know if they're okay. So that's another thing you can do with ham radio. So any other questions before we go here? When I'm talking, the chat just goes, woo. When I'm not talking, it just goes. Okay, Jen, the React team typically will use CB and the Family Radio Service and GMRS, or General Mobile Radio Service. I'm trying to see if there's anything else in here. Yes, in Puerto Rico, amateur radio is used for health and welfare traffic. It was also used for, I'll probably be back in AM, yes. They were used for coordinating rescues. I helped try to get some people some ideas on how they could talk to each other during rescues. I did not have an Nextel push-to-talk. I had ham radio, which is cooler. So Lisa, that's actually part of what ham radio does. That's part of the service that ham radio does. It's not really above and beyond the call of duty. It's exactly what ham radio was intended for. I'm not in any way being mean by saying that. You didn't know that. But amateur radio, that's really, you know, we're here for emergency communications and to promote international goodwill between countries and between people and countries, you know. Is Faith Hannah trying to be the next Doogie Howser, MD, as a female? No. I don't know what Faith Hannah is going to do. She's probably going to end up working in languages and international affairs of some sort. Zechariah definitely wants to be an aeronautical engineer. Hope has mentioned many different things. One of the things she said was to be the first person to do an amateur radio contact from Mars. I hope she would work me first. Grace is probably going to involve digging in the dirt. Grace likes the dirt, and she likes rocks and dirt. She likes dirt. Grace is always wanting to dig stuff up. I'm just going back to see what other things there are to do, questions to ask. Yes, our kids do love ham radio. They like it quite a bit. All right, I was just scrolling back through several messages and I don't see any other questions. Let's see if there's any more here. Explain a traffic net. So a traffic net is where, let's say somebody wants to send a message to their grandmother. The kids do that to grandma at Christmas time. They can send like a telegram almost. Usually they're 25 words or less. And let's say we want to send it, we would, no, your CB question is not dumb, and not at all. We're just, we're trying to educate, there's no dumb questions about it. The other guy was booted off because he was talking about doing things which aren't legal. CBers aren't allowed to build their own or to use amplifiers, and he was talking about it and kept doing it when he was told not to, so I got rid of it. Where was I? I forget what I was talking about. Let me go back. Sorry. The net. So let's say we want to pass a message to grandma without having to send her an email or to use the phone. It's very easy to pick her up and call the phone. But in the event when the phones don't work or the internet doesn't work, it's good to know how to reliably pass a message from point A to point B with many different stops in between. And if you've ever played telephone or post office, where you say, you know, the brown cow did something, and by the end you get down there, it's like the clown was brown and he did something. You need to know how to pass messages from point A to point B with multiple stops in between, where the messages are relayed properly. So every day there are what they call traffic nets, where people will get on the same frequency at the same time, and they'll check in and they'll say, does anybody have any traffic for Florida? Does anybody have any traffic for the Caribbean? And if there's any messages from one person to another, and they'll pass them. They will pass the messages back and forth. Okay, OCM Ken, or who was it? Elliot, what is your question about CB? Type it again and I'll answer it for you. What was your question? Thank you for letting me drink some iced tea here. Are you still there, Elliot? If you can type your question for me, I'll try to answer it for you. And while we're waiting for that question, most satisfying ham event? I don't know, there's a lot of them. Okay, there was a lot of different things. Curious between the CB and ham radio. Yeah, Elliot, I'll give you a short synopsis so you can go back. I talked about a whole bunch of things. CB, you have you have like 40 channels that you can use. You're limited to like 5 to 7 watts, I think it is. It's illegal to actually talk skip. You're only supposed to be using it local, but sometimes you don't. And in ham radio, we can do numerous things. We can talk all over the world. We can build our own radios. You don't have to have a tower. CB, you don't have to have a license. In amateur radio, you have to study for and pass an exam from the FCC or the whatever licensing body there is. So anyway, Theo, Skip not here. CB band, Skip's not been around for the past few weeks. That's because CB bands are on 11 meters, which is right next to the 10-meter ham band. They are very dependent on sunspots for Skip, and we are at the bottom of the solar cycle. There are no sunspots right now. And yeah, it's, you know, the FCC doesn't regulate CB anymore. You're not supposed to talk Skip, from what I understand. But yeah. So let's see. Yeah. So when there was the attempted coup in Turkey, you know, you heard about it on CNN and Fox News and MSNBC and the networks. And it was very different from what we were hearing from the hams who were right there in Istanbul talking about what was going on outside their windows. Kind of like what we've been doing, driving around, looking at what's going on around North Carolina. When you can hear it live from the people who are watching it, it's unfiltered. And we were able to listen to what was going on in Turkey in real time as it was going on, and that was pretty cool. All right. So the rules changed about Skip. I did not know that. That's okay. So I didn't know. So to talk Skip, yeah, you do need the sunspots. So sunspots typically are on an 11-year cycle. We're almost to the bottom of the sunspot cycle. The amateur radio bands are atrocious right now. The sunspots activate the ionosphere somehow, and the ionosphere then bounces our signals around. Without sunspots, when our signals get bounced up there in the ionosphere, it eats it up. They get absorbed, and we can't talk as far. Elliot, you are allowed to listen. You don't have to pass the course in order to listen. Just don't talk. And what I will say is people will tell you to get a Bofang radio for 29 bucks. Don't do it. Save your money and get one of these radios. You can get these, so a Yaesu FT 60R. You can get them for about $149 now. It's military grade. Amateur radio operators or licensees are required by the FCC and expected by the FCC to make sure that their gear works and works properly. 3 out of 5 Bofang radios that are $29, all those cheap radios that I've tested and seen tested, have not been legal to use because they are transmitting what they call spurious emissions. And let's say if anybody is a musician, you understand harmony. So you have your first harmonic, which is your main frequency that you're talking on. Your second harmonic is double that frequency. Your third harmonic is 3 times that frequency. The fourth harmonic is fourth, and so forth. You're only supposed to be transmitting your first harmonic, and then you can have a second and third, and it has to be suppressed way down, so that it doesn't like talk on multiple frequencies at once. Most radios have very good filtering circuits that take care of that. The Bofang radios, 3 out of 5 of them don't. And it has been known to sometimes cause interference when somebody's talking on that radio, and then it got into a police radio. So don't buy the cheap radios. Talking across town, that's the little handhelds. This little radio in the car, we're talking, across states. We can talk all over the world with it. So I'm going to, guys, keep checking HamRadio.World. Michelle can put that link back up if she would. I will write out my method for getting people to be able to pass their technician license. And this is, some people are going to give me a hard time about this. It's about memorizing the questions. The technician license is a learner's permit for ham radio. And I don't say go memorize the questions and get your license and then not talk to anybody who's experienced and learn how to do it. But it's a learner's permit for ham radio. And there's a way that's pretty much foolproof that can help you understand what is necessary, what the answers to the questions are, and get you a basic understanding of why those answers are what they are. And then once you get your license, you get, as Gary just said, an Elmer And Elmer is ham radio talk for a mentor. And there are still lots of people out there who are very happy and excited to help you learn. And you get out there and get your license, and then you can get on the air and you can learn from people. And as you are learning from people who are pointing out what you're doing right, pointing out what you're doing wrong, helping you get the get your antenna set up, helping you understand how your radio worked. N9GLM, I'm on, give me a frequency and we'll see if we can hear each other. Give me a frequency on 40 meters. And let's stay down in the extra portion here so it's not as let's see, I'm on 7140. 7140, see if you can hear me. N9GLM is a friend of ours named Grant down in Florida. We'll see if we can talk to each other here. You can give me a shout on 7140. 7140. If I hear him, I'll answer him. And this is, when I say 7140, we're talking about N9GLM, this is Whiskey X-Ray 4 Tango Victor, WX4 TV, over. N9, oh. Probably not hearing me because I don't have things tuned properly. Try again. N9GLM from Whiskey X-Ray 4 Tango Victor Mobile, over. And the band has changed where we can't hear each other anymore. How about we tried? Yeah, no copy, sorry. It is easier that you need not to I'm the goat in ham radio. Don't know what that means. Okay, the little handheld here, from point to point, from handheld to handheld, at best maybe a mile or two. If you're using a repeater, you can, depending on how high the repeater's antenna is. Michelle, there's sometimes more than one question from each section. It depends, but yeah, typically there's a certain number of questions from each section. That little radio with a repeater can talk further. I'm going to program in the local repeater here and see if we can key up the local repeater with this radio. You get things right here, 88.5 hertz. WX4 TV testing. Oh, thank you. Greatest of all time. Thank you. All right, so I'm able to use this handheld. I don't know where the repeater is. I think it's on the hospital, which is a couple miles away. And then it broadcasts out, 30, 40 miles. Do repeaters not interfere with shortwave audio radio, like for music? No, they're on different frequencies. They're on different frequencies. I can be on any frequency on 40 meters you want. Keep it. If you want to try to work me here, just revving up my engine because I'm blowing out a little smoke. It's just a little oil leak in this vehicle that has 495,587 miles. So keep it to a hobby. If you want to try to find their frequency, we can try to talk to each other. Yeah, you're not allowed to play music over the air. There is only one exception to intentionally broadcasting. I'm going to drive a little bit just to burn off some of the oil that's catching in the engine here. The only time when you're really allowed to intentionally broadcast music is when it's the space station and part of their whatever they're doing. That's legal for them to broadcast music. Otherwise, you're not supposed to broadcast music. If you're at an event where music is in the background, you can get by with doing it, but you're not allowed to intentionally broadcast music at all on ham radio. So any other questions as I just tool around the parking lot here to try to burn some of the oil out of my exhaust pipe. $71.44. Let's go to $71.44. Is this frequency in use? WX4 TV. Make sure that I'm tuned properly and I'm not. Stand by, Grant. I've got to tune the antenna. This antenna, I can change the length of it so that it's resonating properly without burning up the radio. And it's not resonating properly, so fixing that. Whiskey X-ray for Tango Victor. N9 GLM, N9 GLM, WX4. And if anybody else wants to try, we're on 7144. That's an extra class frequency. We can go up north to the general class frequencies if need be. No, we haven't used it. We haven't used it. A police scanner, I don't have one. When I try to use a police scanner, I use an app on my phone if I need it. But yeah, most of them now are scrambled on 800 megahertz, and unless you have the encryption key, you can't hear them. Any other questions? You guys are getting a tour of the parking lot of the Berkeley Mall in Goldsboro, North Carolina. Yeah, Chris, you can, but you can only listen to the ones that aren't encrypted. Many of them are becoming more and more of them becoming encrypted every day. I've been a ham since April. Well, my license was issued before that. Oh, there's a little baby kitten out here. There's the mother over there. I got my license in the mail April 12th, 1981. I was licensed a couple weeks before that. Back then, your license was actually mailed to you by the FCC. The food was awesome. Yeah, QRZ. QRZ means who's calling me, and we use that as a way to talk to me. That's what he was referring to with that comment of QRZ. Any other questions about ham radio? Yeah, you're looking at my hotel room right here. There are no hotel rooms. I may call a friend here and see if I can stay at his house, but I'm not sure. It's late. Let me see. 7156, am I hearing anybody? Let's see. I hear some people on 7156. So yeah, there are people there. Tony, yeah, 75 meters quite regularly, not usually from a truck. I don't go anywhere near 7,200, and the children don't either. Oh, this guy is in Las Vegas. Let's see here. Was it 7156?
I'd like for other stations to show up, but I probably better go. So, back to you, Mike. W9ANF, W5GHU.
WN9 AHF, I believe it is, from Whiskey X-Ray 4 Tango Victor, WX4TV, Stroke Mobile in Goldsboro, North Carolina. I'm missing. Let me see if I can find any international stations here. HF is a FT A57D, and the UHF VHF is FT 8800R. Being used, yes. All right, I'm going to go down to 75 meters. Oh, this is cool. This is a WWV clock. Listen to this. In a minute, it'll tell us what time it is, or in a few seconds. So that's the atomic clock in Fort Collins, Colorado. And tells you what time it is. I'm going to see if we can talk to anybody on 75 meters here. I've pushed the button to lengthen my antenna, not antenna, or I sound like somebody from the south here. We'll see if we can make some contacts here. Lots of questions went by. I'm looking to see what what would you tell someone to use to buy for quality, not money, for a house setup? Cindy, if it's for HF, I really like the ICOM IC 7300. It's about $1,000, and it's an incredible radio. You can do software-defined radios on and listen to some of the ham bands and hear what's going on. What else here? Let's see. 7200. Yeah, it's just where a bunch of idiots like to hang out, and the FCC doesn't have enough resources to actually go after them. All right, so let's see if we're actually tuned up here somewhat. What I'm doing is I'm using a controller. I'm putting out a 2-watt carrier, using the length of my antenna to make it resonate properly on the right frequency. Let's see who we can hear. I'm listening to 3938. And where, I'm going to go back and see, was it 7138 was England? This guy's talking. Christian's a real fan of 75 meters. A lot of old guys sit down there and talk about their bunions and stuff. I'm going to see if we can hear anybody in another country here and see if we can talk to them. Okay, so Tyler, no, on single sideband, there is no squelch. You're listening to the static and everything all the time. Okay, this guy is in England, it sounds like. See if we can hear when he comes back to the guy again. Let's see if we can.
We'll have to do something about that, Martin. I don't know what to say. I bet the menu in that flex, if you can get faster. If I was you, Martin,
Yeah, too much fading. But anyway, so what? Tomorrow. You know, there is some digital that you can do to get rid of it, but you just learn how to listen around it. And the band conditions are really poor tonight. So what I'll do is I'll see about tomorrow after we do some driving around and looking at stuff around Kinston or wherever we end up. You need to go back and watch it, Tammy. I didn't do a video of eating, but we got a tour of where they cook the pig. It was really cool. It's right at the last 15 minutes of that last live stream. So I'm going to probably end this here pretty soon. And tomorrow I'll try to get down to where there's some more stuff going on, and then I'll see if we can find a place to set up a ham radio station in the field, and I can show you guys how we can operate with solar power and battery and an antenna, you know, stuck up on a 25-foot pole. And I'll try to find a place where we can do it out in the middle of nowhere. So, and show you guys what we can do. So, any other questions before I say good night? Well, it's almost 11 o'clock. Thanks for riding along with us. It was going to be a short 10-minute video. You guys learned a little bit about ham radio. You can learn more about it by going to HamRadio.World. I'll let Michelle give that a well. Yeah, Lisa, you're right. You're very welcome, Elliot. You can do it again. My dinner, I went to Wilbur's Barbecue here in Goldsboro, North Carolina, and I'm going to start driving to where I need to go, so I'm not going to be paying attention to your chats anymore. I will leave the light on. I can see to drive with the light on, but no more paying attention to the chats. I need to get going down towards Kinston. Hopefully, US Highway 70 is open and I can get down there. So Wilbur's Barbecue is a North Carolina barbecue restaurant here in Goldsboro. There's only one of them as far as I know. Owned by a guy named Wilbur Shirley, and he was taught to make barbecue back in the 1950s by my either great or great uncle Lloyd Griffin. And went in and saw Mr. Shirley today, and he let us, he took me out. I told him you guys were watching on YouTube, and he took me out back where they were burning the coals for the night's cooking of the pigs, and they're burning oak and getting a bunch of hot coals, and then this building looks like it's about 50 feet long, and they had these grills in there where they had whole hog on one side and they had Boston butts or something like that on the other side. They had I forget what else he said was in there, but they put all the coals under there, and it's in this big smokehouse, and these two guys sit out there all night and cook the pig for 8 hours overnight. They smoke it and barbecue it, and it was really cool. Really, I love eating there. It's not good for you. It's barbecue pork, but it tastes good. And when I was sitting in there, Mr. Shirley came back and he said, "Here, let me show you your kinfolk." And he showed me a picture of Uncle Lloyd and himself back in the 50s. And then he showed some airplane where they had taken the barbecue somewhere. And that was really cool. So if you go back and watch the last video that's just before this one, I think it's river flooding in Wayne County, North Carolina. The last 15 minutes or so are from Wilbur's Barbecue. And it's a cool little video about, you know, what they're doing, how they cook their barbecue, and dinner was good. I had the pork barbecue plate. I had mashed potatoes, and Michelle, I don't know what they put in their mashed potatoes, but wow, they are really good. And then the slaw, which is a white slaw, not a red slaw, and some hush puppies. And what hush puppies are, for you guys who are not in the South, cornmeal, basically fried cornbread, and the legend is, I don't know if it's true or not, is that the dogs would sit there while they were cooking the pig, and they would complain and want some pig, so people would be, they fried these things and threw them on the ground for the dog to eat, and like, hey, hush puppy. And apparently that's where that came from. Sometimes they're sweet, sometimes they're made with onions in them. Wilbur's are kind of semi-sweet. They're really good with butter on them. And it's making me hungry again. Sweet tea, I've been drinking the sweet tea here, sipping on it. It's a good Eastern North Carolina meal to have. And one of the sad things is Wilbur said he's one of the last people making barbecue this way. That it's too much work and people don't want to put the work into it. And that's sad to see. All right, guys, so I'm getting out here to, when I pass this stoplight, we're going to lose our connectivity, at least we did earlier today. So I'm going to say good night. Thanks for watching. And we will